Hello everyone. In this presentation, we'll examine how educational leaders can effectively manage unpopular organizational change. The scenario we're analyzing involves ABC School District, which is facing financial challenges due to decreased state funding and rising operational costs. To address these challenges, district leaders must implement several difficult decisions, including reducing administrative positions, combining grade levels, and increasing class sizes. Although these changes may be necessary to maintain financial stability, they can create uncertainty and resistance among stakeholders. Because of this, effective leadership during times of change requires clear communication, stakeholder engagement, and strategies that support both staff and students throughout the transition process. Educational leaders must recognize that organizational change is not simply about implementing new policies or structures. It also involves guiding people through the emotional and professional transition that comes with those changes. Research on change leadership explains that individuals typically move through several phases during organizational change. Initially, stakeholders become aware that change is occurring. This awareness stage is often followed by resistance or uncertainty as individuals begin to process how the change will affect them. Over time, stakeholders may begin exploring new ways of working within the changed environment. Eventually, as new routines become established, the organization moves towards a new state of integration. Because of this process, leaders must provide clear communication, support, and opportunities for stakeholder involvement in order to help people move successfully through each stage of transition. Before leaders can successfully implement organizational change, they must first clearly communicate why the change is necessary and what the organization will look like moving forward. When stakeholders do not understand the reasons behind a decision, they're more likely to resist it or assume that the change is arbitrary. Because of this, educational leaders must communicate the financial realities and organizational challenges that are driving the change. In the case of ABC School District, decreased state funding and rising operational costs require the district to restructure in order to maintain or remain financially stable. Explaining these realities helps stakeholders understand that the changes are not simply administrative decisions, but necessary actions to protect the long-term stability of the district. Leaders should also emphasize how these decisions support the school district's core mission of providing quality education for the students. For example, reducing administrative costs or consolidating grade levels may allow the district to preserve important programs and instructional resources. Research on organizational change supports this approach. Burke and Barron emphasize that leaders must communicate a clear future vision that helps stakeholders understand where the organization is headed. During organizational change, different stakeholder groups often experience transition in different ways. Because of this, leaders must adapt communication to address the needs and concerns of each group. Teachers, for example, may be concerned about increased workload and maintaining instructional quality in larger classes. Communication with teachers should focus on available supports, collaboration opportunities, and strategies that will help them adapt to the new structure. Parents may be more concerned about student safety and the quality of academic programs. Leaders should clearly explain how these priorities will continue to be protected, even as organizational changes are implemented. Students may also feel uncertain when their learning environment changes. Communication directed towards students should emphasize that they'll continue to receive support and remain valued members of the school community. Cotter's work on organizational change highlights the importance of communicating the vision consistently and through multiple channels. When leaders tailor communication to the needs of different stakeholders, they can reduce uncertainty and strengthen trust throughout the change process. One way leaders can involve stakeholders in the change process is by creating collaborative implementation teams. These teams may include teacher leaders, department representatives, instructional coaches, and administrators who are respected within the school community. These individuals serve as change champions who help guide the implementation of organizational changes within their school or department. Collaborative teams can help leaders translate broad policy decisions into practical strategies that work within classrooms and school environments. For example, they may help develop scheduling adjustments, coordinate grade level collaboration, or identify challenges that arise as the changes are implemented. In addition to supporting implementation, these teams also help strengthen communication between leadership and staff. Team members can share concerns from their colleagues while also communicating updates and decisions back to the broader school community. Research on distributed leadership supports this approach. Spillane emphasizes that involving educators in leadership and decision-making processes strengthens collaboration and improves the success of organizational change initiatives. And this strategy focuses on establishing structured systems for gathering stakeholder feedback during organizational change. When individuals feel uncertain about how decisions are being made or how changes will affect them, resistance to change can increase. Providing opportunities for feedback helps address this concern by allowing stakeholders to share their perspectives and experiences during the transition. Educational leaders can create several avenues for feedback, including surveys, town hall meetings, small group discussions, or anonymous feedback opportunities. These tools allow leaders to gather information about how the change is affecting different groups within the school community. Once feedback is collected, it's important for leaders to communicate how that information is being used. When stakeholders see that their input influences decisions or leads to adjustments in implementation, they're more likely to remain engaged and supportive. Research on organizational change supports this strategy. Kaw and colleagues explain that resistance to change often occurs when stakeholders feel uncertain or excluded from decision-making. Providing opportunities for input can reduce these concerns and increase support for change initiatives.
To ensure that all staff are obtaining the resources needed in order to avoid burnout and resentment toward the career, we are going to provide 3 different strategies for how to avoid this. One strategy is targeted professional development. We cannot expect teachers to succeed in larger classes without different support. We will provide training on differentiated instruction and co-teaching models. Classes are increasing by around 10% each year, and teachers need practical strategies for managing larger groups without losing student engagement or compromising instructional quality. The focus is on practical strategies for managing larger groups without losing student engagement. Some components of the professional development that we would be providing are strategies for meeting diverse learned needs in larger groups, collaborative approaches when classes are combined, techniques for maintaining order with more students, and methods to keep all students active and involved. Differentiated instruction allows for co-teaching and instructional models to directly address teacher concerns regarding efficacy and workload in a restructured environment. So to implement this, we will use a needs assessment to find where teachers are facing challenges in the room. We will go over curriculum design to find out where the curriculum is failing the teacher's needs. We will go over the delivery methods of this professional development, as not all methods work for every teacher. And we will provide ongoing support for all teachers with follow-up coaching and resource sharing. Another strategy that we'll be using is administrative mentoring and role streamlining. Remaining administrators that remain in their roles are facing an increased cognitive load due to many educators leaving the field. We'll implement peer mentoring and use project management tools to automate routine tasks. Project management tools, according to Burke and Barron, automate administrative tasks, reducing the manual workload created by the 15% staff reduction. The systemic support is vital to prevent leadership burnout. So some ways that we can use this automated technology is for workflow systems, so streamlining approval processes for different tasks that need approved by higher administration, for communication hubs, so that all educators can obtain the answers to the questions they have without having to go through many hoops, and then data dashboards so that they can quickly get the answers that they need for all of their technology within the classroom. Some steps to this implementation are to map new roles and responsibilities, to identify mentoring pairs, because not all pairs will work well together. We need to make sure that everyone is able to work together nicely. We're going to select and implement these different tools so that we can streamline all of this information effectively. We're going to provide the tool training because no one is able to effectively use something if they are not well trained in it. And we're going to monitor the workload and stress of these administrators, as creating an entire new system can be very daunting. Since 15% of the school administrators are leaving each year, this cognitive load gets increasingly big on them, since they are taking over all of the roles and responsibilities of those who are leaving. These project management tools will ensure to prevent burnout and increase critical safety and compliance for all tasks that are still being met. Finally, the implementation of pulse surveys is our final resource for avoiding this teacher burnout and leaving of the profession. So, we are going to conduct brief bi-weekly digital surveys to measure the organizational temperature within our district. What this means is we are going to identify and address the psychological withdrawal or resentment of different parts of their tasks before it leads to higher teacher turnover or a significant moral decline. What this really means is we want to make sure that we are finding when these teachers are feeling burnt out and what is causing this burnout before it results in teacher turnover and resignation from their positions. We're going to find the early warning signs of these problems, and we're going to have proactive intervention rather than reactive crisis management. So to design these protocols, we're going to keep it brief, very few questions that won't take very long to complete to decrease that cognitive workload. We're going to use rating scales 1 through 5 so that it's easy for them to pick exactly which level they are on. We're going to include open-ended options for those who feel that it'd be better for them to write out their answers. We're going to ensure anonymity so that everyone feels comfortable responding, even if they have things to say that might not be favored by upper administration. And we're going to share results with committees that are going to help make sure that we are getting past this burnout and finding solutions to the problems before they get worse. Some different things to keep an eye on for these pulse surveys are any red flags, which means any scores that drop below a 3 on any metric in the survey, which means that they are not happy with something. We need to find a solution. We're going to look for any consecutive periods of decline. So throughout the surveys, if there's one specific category that continuously goes down each time, we need to figure out a way to solve it. And then common themes. So if there's a specific category that it seems all staff members are having an issue with, that definitely means that we need to do something.
The next area that we're going to look at is celebrating the small wins and building the culture. First, we're going to look at highlighting the small wins. When we're building momentum through recognized progress during a difficult transition, we have some concepts to hit. We need to establish a success wall or dedicate a segment of their digital newsletter specifically to celebrating progress throughout the transition. When a combined grade level completes a successful project, spotlight it. When streamlined administrative processes actually save teachers time, announce it. When positive outcomes emerge from these changes, make sure everyone knows. The research backing this comes from Burke and Barron, who found that recognizing progress builds confidence and maintains motivation when people are struggling through change. Small wins accumulate into significant momentum over time. Your implementation framework has 4 steps. First, create visibility through both a physical success wall and a main area of the school, plus your digital newsletter. Secondly, establish a nomination process so staff, students, and parents can submit wins they observe. Third, commit to weekly recognition. Highlight at least one win every single week consistently. And fourth, always connect these small wins back to larger goals so people see how incremental progress contributes to overall success. This isn't just feel-good fluff though. Harvard Business research on how the power of small wins demonstrates that recognizing progress is actually the most powerful motivator in complex change efforts. Burke and Barron reinforced this by stating that celebrating progress is essential to maintain momentum when changes get hard. The second part of this is looking at the culture. When we address culture identities through unity events or identity building events, we look at the grade level combines. Existing identities and loyalties can create real division, the us versus them mentality. Host intentional events for your newly combined grade levels to help students and staff forge a new shared identity. This prevents the fragmentation that often occurs when schools merge or creates a genuine belonging in the new configuration. The core principles here are straightforward. Intentional events that bring people together help form new inclusive cultural identities that transcend old boundaries. For the implementation, hold monthly events during the first semester, then quarterly after that. Ensure complete inclusivity. Everyone participates, no exceptions. Involve students in the planning and execution to build ownership. And critically, teachers and administrators must actively engage alongside the students, not just supervise from the sidelines. How do you know that this is working? Track participation rates. Gather student survey feedback on belonging. Observe cross-grade interactions directly. And watch for the reduction in the us versus them language and conversation. Edutopia research on positive school culture emphasizes that shared experiences are foundational to cultural building. This is where the unity becomes the identity. So how does this all come together? Let's look at the 12-month implementation timeline. These stack bars charts show the phased rollout of all 10 strategies across 5 categories: communication, engagement, support, monitoring, and culture. The height of each bar represents implementation intensity, how much activity is happening that month. You'll notice we start strong in month 1 with heavy emphasis on the communication and engagement, getting people informed and involved from day 1. Months 2 through 6 represent peak implementation intensity, where we're relying in support structures, monitoring the systems, and cultural initiatives simultaneously. This is when most of the heavy lifting happens, and when your leadership team needs to be most visible and active. Watch how the color composition shifts as we progress. Early months are demonstrated by communication and engagement. Blue and tan, mid-year layers, blue and tan, the mid-year layers in substantial support and monitoring, the orange and the dark blue sections. Later, months shift towards sustaining culture and continuous monitoring as we transition from the implementation to the maintenance mode. The 5 critical success factors are genuine leadership commitment, meaningful stakeholder engagement, continuous monitoring throughout the process, adaptive responses when data tells us something needs adjusting, and above all, unwavering focus on the core mission, providing quality education for every student. This timeline isn't meant to be rigid. It's a flexible framework that lets you respond to what you're learning while maintaining a forward momentum. So in conclusion, the changes facing the ABC School District are undeniably challenging. The budget constraints, restructuring, large classes, none of this is easy. But implementing these research-based strategies can transform resistance into resilience. It comes down to 5 interconnected pillars: communicating with transparency, engaging stakeholders meaningfully, supporting staff professionally, monitoring well-being consistently, and celebrating progress intentionally. When educational leaders commit to these practices, they can navigate even unpopular changes while preserving what matters the most. And what does matter the most? Providing quality education for every student. That is the mission that anchors everything we've discussed here. Communication, engagement, support, monitoring, culture. These aren't separate initiatives or checkboxes. They're integrated elements of strategic change management that work together. Build the resilience your school community needs to not just survive this transition, but emerge stronger, more unified, and more focused on student success than ever before.